you by Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County.
Supervisors, it is now 7 o'clock. I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, December the 2nd.
No.
7th.
I'm sorry, did I say? I should know that. I've been watching Pearl Harbor memorials all day. December 7th, thank you. We'll begin with honoring the flag. Supervisors in relative unison. I pledge allegiance
to the
The
flag
flag,
The flag
United
of the
States
United
of
States
America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not bad. Thank you. Followed by a moment of reflection by Supervisor Zook.
Thank you, Chairman Schmeier and fellow board members. Today is December 7th. This day has significance in history, according to President Franklin Roosevelt, as a day that will live in infamy. 80 years ago today was the attack on the U.S. territory at Pearl Harbor and the Hawaiian Islands. That ramped up our involvement in the World War II across the Pacific Ocean. Many men and women served our country in this cause, and we salute all of the past, present, and future military people for their efforts. Of special note today, here in Eau Claire County, are 7 men, all from the small community of Augusta, who served at the same time and were on the island when it was attacked. They varied in military branches and locations, but all saw action of some type. They were Howard Ballett, James Green, Forrest Jewell, Norman Randall, Rudolph Thews, Clifford Vanderberg, and Lloyd Zook. So again, this day in history, we honor these men and all who served past, present, and future to protect and defend our liberties and our way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zook. Clerk McDonald, will you please call the roll?
Gibson,
Present.
McKinney,
Present.
Knight,
Here.
Pagonis,
Here.
Anton. I believe I saw Charles here. He's not muted. He's unmuted. Good. Zook,
Here.
Chilson,
He's here. He's probably muted.
okay. Stelgis, Lowry,
Present.
Coffee,
Here.
Bates,
Here.
Russell,
Present.
Gatlin,
Present.
Smyer,
Present.
Hambuck Boyle,
Here.
Neiman,
Here.
Dunning,
Present.
Wilkie,
Here.
Anderson,
Present.
Beckfield,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Leary,
Here.
DeLuca,
Here.
Jansen,
Here.
Schroffnagel,
Here.
Frank,
Here.
and Christofferson.
Present.
Clerk McDonald, did you catch that Stelgis said present?
Okay. We have 28 present.
Thank you.
Well, 27, I'm sorry.
Thank you. We do have quorum. This is approval of the Journal of Proceedings from November 2nd and 3rd of 2021 and November 9th of 2021. Let's do these separately.
Yep.
Chair looks for a motion regarding the minutes of April 2nd and 3rd.
Beckfield so moves.
Beckfield moves.
How about
Hendon
Boyle
seconds.
second?
Handbook Boyle seconds. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to that Journal of Proceedings? Any additions, deletions, or corrections? I hear none. All those in favor of approval of the Journal of Proceedings of November 2nd and 3rd, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion for approval of the Journal of Proceedings from November the 9th, 2021.
Leary moves.
Dunning seconds.
Leary moves, Dunning seconds. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the Journal of Proceedings of November 9th? Any additions, deletions, corrections? All those in favor of approval of the Journal of Proceedings of November the 9th, 2021, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. Next on our, I'm sorry, was there someone who was speaking? Next on our agenda is under appointments, which we are taking early on our agenda in order to seat our newest member. So the chair looks for a motion confirming the appointment of Nathan Otto to fill the vacant County Board Supervisory District 11 seat.
Pagonis moves.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I heard Supervisor Pagonis moving, I think.
Yes.
Yes, and second from Supervisor Bates. Thank you. We could have comment or discussion if you wish, but I don't think it's necessary here. All those in favor of confirming the appointment of Nathan Otto, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. And congratulations, Mr. Otto. Our county clerk will now administer the oath of office to Mr. Otto.
Repeat after me. I, Nathan Otto, having been appointed to the office of Eau Claire County Supervisor District 11,
I, Nathan Otto, having been appointed to the office of Eau Claire County District Supervisor, District 11,
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisors, a hand for our newest member. Okay. Thank you. Before we move on, just a reminder from the chair, please put yourself on mute. The chair will accept verbal motions and seconds and points of order, but for a turn at speaking, you must raise your hand. The exception will be, of course, Supervisor Schneider, who will be placed in the order of speakers as she indicates. So next on our agenda is public comments. Clerk McDonald, you are helping us with this, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. We do have some comments that were submitted ahead of time by persons who did not wish to speak. Those have been distributed to the board members, I believe. Is that correct, Samantha? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
that's
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. So Clerk McDonald, will you call forward those who indicated a wish to speak?
our first speaker, David Carlson. You have 3 minutes. Are you there, David?
Yep, I'm here.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is David Carlson.
I'm the founder and co-owner of CC We Adapt. I provided my address in the public comment application to show my residency in Eau Claire County. I'm commenting tonight on the agenda item pertaining to the approval of grants, specifically the funding being accepted for the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Department. From what I can measure, the county board will be approving a total of $147,500 in grant funding for current drug operations. Just as a reminder to this board, the Sheriff's Department has also submitted a proposal for $6,215,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funding. The county is receiving $20 million of ARPA funds. This money would be used to expand the jail, an expansion project that would cost Eau Claire County taxpayers an additional $2,391,495 each year moving forward. I'll now turn to an article in the Leader Telegram from July 22nd of this year, and I quote, Eau Claire County reported 11 accidental overdose deaths in 2018 and 12 in 2019. The number rose to 18 in 2020. Another quote from the same article, if you look at 2018 and 2019, those are normal fluctuations. It might be up one or two, but we're jumping by 6 in Eau Claire County and tripling in Dunn County. Eau Claire and Dunn counties are both contributing partners of the West Central Drug Task Force and beneficiaries of the HIT of funding flowing through Eau Claire County into the West Central Drug Task Force. I contrast these figures to show that even though the Sheriff's Department will boast of increasing and bigger drug and money seizures, those boasts only indicate the depth of the problem. The real measure is in human cost. Those are the figures we should be concerned with. How many children are orphaned due to overdose deaths? How many children are traumatized by their parents being incarcerated? The human cost and the amount of funding flowing into the Sheriff's Department are in positive correlation. As one increases, so does the other. Blame is not all in the Sheriff's Department, law enforcement, or the courts, however. Law enforcement often gets saddled with responsibilities that are outside of their scope of expertise. The rise in addiction, homelessness, and overdoses, that is the responsibility of every department in Eau Claire County, and suffering will continue to increase until we move away from being reactive with taxpayer money and become proactive. Community organizations, BIPOC and otherwise, have been screaming for county administrators to listen. But the only way Eau Claire County knows how to work with its community stakeholders is to try to absorb and co-opt their efforts. This leads to failures on all accounts and goes against the principles of several organizations in this community, including mine. The county board must take a stand against the dysfunction present within the Eau Claire County government infrastructure. There is no one else who can. And the first act must be to stop this compulsive allocation of funding to the Sheriff's Department. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Scott Rogers. Are you there, Scott?
Clerk McDonald, I think.
Scott Rogers. I'm the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce. We work to serve the community as a champion of a strong local and regional economy. The purpose of our comments tonight is to encourage approval of the proposed rezoning in the town of Pleasant Valley. Among the most significant current challenges in our local economy are workforce development and housing supply. These issues are closely tied together because housing supply impacts the ability to meet the needs of a growing population as well as the affordability for all individuals and families. Therefore, this is an opportunity to increase housing supply in the area, addressing the housing shortage while providing benefits for everyone towards attainability and affordability. We note that approval of this rezoning has been recommended by the county planning and development staff as being consistent with a comprehensive plan. Eau Claire County and the town of Pleasant Valley future land use maps both include this property in the rural residential planning area, and approval has been recommended by the town of Pleasant Valley Board and by the Eau Claire County Committee on Planning and Development. Therefore, we have emailed each of you also a letter outlining the importance with more information to the greater community and the need for more housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Cody
Philip Jack.
Check. Thank you.
6176 Sandstone Road, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I would like to thank all of the board members that I was able to talk to in the last couple of weeks about this rezone on the Martinke property. We had some really good discussions, and I understand this is a difficult decision when there's neighbor opposition. But honestly, there is neighbor opposition on nearly every one of these. And it is always the same arguments. The groundwater impacts, the traffic impacts, and density are the big ones you will hear about. But between Adam and I, we have built over 25 developments in the Chippewa Valley that has produced well over 1,000 housing units. All of these same concerns have been brought up, addressed, and carefully planned for on every neighborhood we have built. Nothing is ever perfect when you have to deal with unpredictable weather patterns or ever-changing market conditions. But my point is, we do have a lot of experience, and we believe strongly in every neighborhood we have been a part of. And in my experience, every neighborhood we have built becomes a part of the surrounding neighborhoods and has a positive effect on the whole community. All of these concerns that you will hear are and will continue to be carefully vetted by a very qualified Eau Claire County staff and by the Township of Pleasant Valley, both of who are very supportive of this rezone. This is also honestly one of the cleanest parcels of land that we ever worked on south of Eau Claire. It is more or less an infill development with all of the RH zoning neighborhoods around it. Its close proximity to Highway 93 and the city of Eau Claire is what makes it so desirable. It also has very sandy soils, so it's bad for farming, but great for septic systems. We also will build a public neighborhood road with controlled intersections, so there is a safe place for residents and even the neighbors to walk. And we only have 3 lots that border Lowe's Creek, with the closest house being well over 400 feet away from the river. This land has been designated to be RH zoning for a long time. It is surrounded by RH zoning and in an area where there is not enough housing to meet the demand. There are currently under 5 lots for sale in Pleasant Valley, and the
30
township
seconds.
has been increasing by a couple hundred people a year. That is why so many people are very supportive of this proposal. Adam and I would like to build a nice and safe development so we can continue to build high quality houses that a lot of families also want the opportunity to live in and enjoy. There's a lot of demand for this type of neighborhood, and we are doing everything by the book and in an area that has been set aside for this type of neighborhood for a long time. If not this parcel that we believe is set up perfect for RH zoning, then where are we supposed to build housing that is so desperately needed in Eau Claire County? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Sean Bohan. Sean? Adam Ashley?
Hello, I'm Adam Ashley. I'm part of the development group for the Mertinke Trust rezone. I'm partnered with Cody Flipcheck on this development. I'm just going to take a minute to drill down a bit further on the concerns that have been noted by some of the neighborhood opposition regarding Lowe's Creek. As Cody mentioned, only 3 of our proposed lots would touch the Lowe's Creek frontage, and those homes would be quite a ways out away from the creek itself. It's notable that from Balsam Road to Cedar Road along Lowe's Creek, there are currently 19 homes that are zoned RH that do back up to Lowe's Creek. Of those 19 homes, they touch 9,946 lineal feet of Lowe's Creek. The 3 lots that we have would touch a total of 608 lineal feet of Lowe's Creek. The average of the 19 lots that currently touch it is 523 lineal feet per lot. It's also worth noting that the 19 lots that are currently touching Lowe's Creek in that small area were developed well before the stringent stormwater guidelines were put in place that we're required to follow today. We have far greater levels of approvals and protections in place than any of those homes currently have. This will be done very thoughtfully, and it won't damage Lowe's Creek in any way. Again, just touching on the opposition of the neighbors. The large majority of each of these neighbors do live on RH zoning. A couple of them that were vocal at the town board level proclaim that they are not neighborly individuals, and they do not want a bunch of people in that area. I do understand that, as I have lived in the country most of my life, but I also understand that when we build homes, we give that same opportunity to new families, and it stands to reason that if they enjoy it out there, so will the new families. There are concerns about septics and wells that have been raised. And as Cody mentioned, you do have talented staff in place that have strict regulations that we have to follow. The average lot size in this development is more than 3 times what the state requires for a private septic system. So we are very far below the maximum amount of septics that we could put on this property. So that's a good thing in case anything were to need to be replaced in the future.
30 seconds.
I would also just like to thank all of you that took the time to return our phone calls or our emails. Is greatly appreciated, and we appreciate the fact that you do your job thoughtfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go back to Sean. He is now on the line. Go ahead, Sean.
Good evening. My name is Sean Bohan, E5055 Interlochen Boulevard, Town of Pleasant Valley. I'm the civil engineer that is working with the builders and owners of the Mertinke Trust rezone. I would like to start off with thanking the county board members that I got a chance to speak with. I know that everyone is busy. I really appreciate you taking the time for our discussions. It's based on these discussions in addition to the meetings with the town board and also the County Planning and Development Committee that I would like to focus on 3 items this evening: septic systems, stormwater runoff, and the development process. There have been numerous comments that the property isn't large enough to support 40+ septic systems. Note that the concept plan submitted has a density of 1.5 acre lots, and state code allows for lot sizes that are half of that size with septic systems. Nevertheless, after questions arose at the Planning and Development Committee meeting, the builders hired a state certified soil tester with over 30 years of experience to dig test pits and see if the site is viable. After 42 test pits, the tester came back and stated that these are some of the best soils that he has analyzed for septic systems, and that almost every single one of them will be considered a conventional system. These types of systems are the best and least expensive because they end up using the natural soils for the treatment, and they're indicative of great soils. So basically, there's no soil limitations such as clay soils, groundwater, or rock. There will not be an issue with the proposed number of these lots. These tests will be submitted to the Eau Claire County staff and health department for approval. The second item is the stormwater runoff. We will proposing a stormwater management system that will include the use of grass swales, sediment basins, and infiltration facilities. These systems place priority on treating and infiltrating runoff. Again, based on conversations with board members and listening to the neighbors, controlling runoff and protecting Lowe's Creek is a high priority, and why wouldn't it be? It's a fabulous resource in a Class 2 trout stream. The builders and owners of the property want to protect this resource and develop the property safely. They don't want to degrade it, they want to enhance it. The thing to pay attention to in regards to runoff into trout streams is not only controlling the sediment, but also controlling the water temperatures. By providing these types of systems with infiltrating runoff, we'll be protecting Lowe's Creek.
30 seconds.
Lastly is the development and approval process. Changing the zoning on the property to fit the future land use and the comprehensive plan for the county and for the town is only the first step. There's numerous other approvals with the town and county and Wisconsin DNR that need to occur prior to the site being developed. There's also additional reports and field work necessary to get to these approvals, of which a number of these have already been completed. We've done a wetland delineation. We completed the soil analysis and test pits. We've done a floodplain determination, boundary and topographic surveys. Eau Claire County has great and experienced staff that reviews these submittals and makes recommendations. We need to trust the process that is in place. I want to thank you for your time and your support this evening.
Thank you.
Pat Smith.
Good evening, everyone. This is Pat Smith, President of the Chippewa Valley Home Builders Association and current Chair of the Government Affairs Committee. Thanks for allowing us to comment regarding the Mertinke rezoning in Pleasant Valley. The Chippewa Valley Home Builders Association is support of this development as it will add many needed lots in Eau Claire County. Statistics from the Wisconsin Builders Association show that the amount of lots being added across the state over the last 10 years has dropped dramatically from over 14,000 new lots per year down to just 3,400 last year. And we're feeling that strain in the Chippewa Valley as well. If this trend continues, there's no way we'll be able to meet the needs for additional housing to support the growth in Eau Claire County. Since COVID, there's been an influx of families seeking to make Eau Claire their home, and there plain and simple are not enough new and existing homes to support this growth. Please keep in mind that for every dollar that these new people bring to our area gets circulated through our economy 7 times before it gets taken out of circulation, which in turn brings in millions and millions of dollars to our economy. These dollars go to employing hundreds of people in the trades and every other business sector of our area. Finally, keep in mind that everything that has been proposed for this development follows the county's comprehensive plan that was updated just 2 years ago. We ask that you vote in favor of this rezoning as it is good for the county. If not, we are requesting that we are provided with a new comprehensive plan that will give builders and developers a guideline to follow for future developments so that we are not putting in thousands of dollars into projects that get stonewalled. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Paul Holzinger.
I'm here to speak in support of the Mertinke Trust rezone request also. I just want to note that I'm not affiliated directly with the developer, but I am a home builder in our community. And I also have clients who are looking for lots to build on. Several clients that I can think of right away that have been looking for 1 acre, 1.5 acre lots build on for over a year who have not found a spot that's suitable for what they want. And they don't want larger properties because they're more expensive and it prices them out of the price range that they want to be in. I want to just express how important it is to follow our comprehensive plan. Many of you are involved in that comprehensive review process. I think it was just reviewed in 2020. And builders, developers, professionals, engineers, county staff all look to that comprehensive plan to identify how to develop land. We use that as our guideline. And so we don't just look at a property and say, I want to put a bunch of houses in there. There's those guidelines that this same board approves and sets up is what we use to figure out how to do it. So I think when we come, like a developer comes to you with a rezoning request, it's not blind. And I hope that you all understand that we're using your guidelines to put this together. Some other notes, I did submit a letter. I don't want to read it verbatim, but a couple of highlights I want to touch on. This is a property that's been designated for this type of growth for a long time. It again was most recently reviewed in 2020 There was no amendment to the future zoning use maps. So how do the developers find this? Well, they look at that future zoning use to understand how they can use it. That's why this rezone request is in front of you, because those future use maps indicate that this is the proper use for that area. Also, you're working on a rezoning request here. When
30
you
seconds.
decide, thank you. When you decide to approve this or deny it, when you approve it, there's also many other reviews that go on with a preliminary plat and stormwater runoff and soil management, and all of those things are all conducted by other professionals beyond just you, and they're also reviewed at the township level, county staff level. So that's just ask that you trust the process, trust your own comprehensive plan, and vote to approve this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Douglas Mertinky.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. My name is Doug Mertinky. I'm at 3728 Tamara Drive is my residence. I'm the successor trustee for the Mertinky Trust. I just wanted to give you a little background on the property itself. My grandfather purchased this land in the early 1960s and eventually gave it to my parents. My father ran an airplane licensing business out of there in the 70s and 80s. Since then, this land has been used as a hobby farm for corn and soybeans, but due to the very sandy soil, it's not been very productive as a farm. My father obviously ran it as an airport, so he had not flown out of there in the past 25 to 30 years. He did allow some of his friends who were pilots at his discretion, which was very infrequently. Due to his failing health in the past few years, he was not able to keep the landing strip mowed. Therefore, the air traffic has been at an extreme minimum. There's no longer any equipment available to mow the land due to some auctions we had earlier this year. So it is no longer an active airport and is marked with the white crosses on the property to reflect that. My mother passed away in 2014. My father passed away earlier this year. He left this property in a trust to my 5 sisters and me. Prior to his death, we did have discussions about the property and the development of a subdivision. Considering all the development and subdivisions north of the property on Todd Road, as well as east and south in Stonebrook, this property is already surrounded by neighboring subdivisions that are all zoned RH. With that, it makes the most sense to rezone this land RH to tie into the other properties as well as a future map of Pleasant Valley. This is all in the recommendation of the Pleasant Valley Board and Eau Claire Planning and Development Committee, of course. We chose C&M Properties to develop this land as they have gone above and beyond in other surrounding developments. They have produced high quality subdivisions with attention to detail. We know they will make this a top-notch subdivision. I grew up in Pleasant Valley, spent most of my life there, and will be proud to have this land rezoned into housing so others can enjoy a bit of country living with the benefits of being close to the city. We agree with the Town of Pleasant Valley Board that it is important to keep density close to Highway 93 versus urban sprawl, which is not beneficial to the town of Pleasant Valley and a detriment to preserving farmland. We are asking you that you strongly consider our request for rezoning of this property in the Mertinky Trust to RH to support the future of the town of Pleasant Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Gorfie?
Clerk McDonald, I don't see him on. I do have 2 callers. If you are on the phone, *6 to unmute, please.
We have Brandon Domes. Or Zachary Anibis.
Brandon is on. I just asked him to unmute. Okay, we'll try Zach. I'll unmute Zach.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. My name is Zach Anibus. I live on E2535 Cedar Road, and my property that my wife and I live on, 18 acres, borders the Mertinke property. Couple things that I would like to address. Brandon Domes, neighbor of ours, submitted a very nice document where he went through, and we have several concerns where the comprehensive plan does not line up with what is actually indeed they are requesting. So, and the issue that we have is we were not provided any answers in regards to our concerns. And to me, that is raises some serious question. So we are still waiting for answers to the questions that we had in regards to that. Secondly, I did go around myself personally and one other gentleman, and we did gather 100 signatures of surrounding properties and personnel within our area here with only a day and a half of time. I did myself personally get every signature with the exception of 2 with the bordering properties to the Mertinke property, all not in favor of rezoning this RH. Some other questions I may have is, and that you guys should ask yourself too, is there is an immediate family in the Mertinke, within the Mertinke Trust that we're interested in purchasing some of the farmland that were directly denied by the executor. Also, my wife, Katie Anibus, and me made an offer to purchase this land as well, keeping it farmland and maintaining its current use as is, which would make everybody in our immediate area very happy. Couple other concerns I have is out in the neighborhood, chatting with other community members here close by, is the relationships between the developer C&M and Doug Mertinke. Also, the relationship between the town board members, Dan Hansen, and C&M Builders. There's also relationships that need to be looked into between C&M Builders and Water Source, which is owned by the Green family as well, who is also on the town board. I've noticed a lot of discussion here about the need for more housing or more property. I had a realtor look into this, and currently there are 161 lots available to purchase today within Eau Claire County and the Eau Claire County School District. So the need for 42 lots, in my opinion, is not even necessary when there's 161 lots already available to purchase. I have much more stuff I would like to go over, but that will do it for now. So I thank everybody for your time this evening, and I really hope you strongly consider what myself and our neighbors have proposed here for you guys this evening.
Thank you. Clerk McDonald, are we at the end of the list?
We are. Samantha, do you see anybody else online?
Brandon Doms is on. I see he's either on his phone or an iPad. Brandon, to unmute, you just click on your screen and hit unmute at the bottom. Clerk McDonald, it doesn't appear that he's responding, but he did provide a comment previously, he stated.
That is everybody on my list then.
Is there anyone else online who wishes to present public comment? Anyone else online who wishes to present public comment? Is there any additional public comment? I hear none. We will close the public comment period and go on to section 6, reports to the county board under 2.04.320. Oral report, first a report from Human Resources and Administration from Director Jessica Rubin and Administrator Kathryn Schauf.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. Director Rubin is going to be sharing a very short PowerPoint. The purpose of this presentation tonight is to simply give the board a quick update on actions and work that is being done with the Human Resources Committee, as well as in the Human Resources Department, as well as putting into practice the things that we know we need to do to maintain our effectiveness in recruitment and retention. As all of you are likely very aware of, the labor market is changing rapidly, and it is changing the way that we recruit. It is continuing to change the way that we need to engage with our employees. And so the Human Resources team has been working on this issue. There are a couple of big steps that are going to be undertaken by the Human Resources team in 2022 that we want to go over with the board. These were incorporated as part of the budget. And so, Jessica, if you would like to take over and share some of your slides, please, in regard to the work that's going to be done.
Certainly. Thank you, Administrator Schauf. I do believe Samantha is at the wheel here with our PowerPoint. So Sam, this is just a brief introduction, some words up here. More Americans are quitting their jobs than ever before. The BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, does tell us that 4.3 million people, fully 2.9% of our entire workforce, quit their jobs in August, an all-time high. There will be more statistics later in the presentation, but surveys do estimate that as many as 47% of US workers are considering changing their job. Next slide, please. So this slide, I recognize, looks a little busy, kind of tight fitting like our labor market. It seems I can walk into any place of business, or I can walk past any establishment and there is signage out on the sidewalk or at the entrance for help wanted, employees needed. Employers are needing to get creative with ways to attract applicants. Some common and not so new approaches include immediate interviews, walk in and get an interview on site. No experience necessary, all shifts available, flexible hours, sign-on bonuses, and refer a friend. The list goes on and on. The most common and current data finds that the unemployment rate for Eau Claire in October of 21 was 2.9%. That's 0.3 percentage points lower than the state of Wisconsin. The number of people unemployed in Eau Claire peaked in April of 2020, if y'all can remember back that far, where that was at, our unemployed were at almost 12,000. Compare that to September of 21, where the unemployed number was just over 2,700, and then down a little bit in October to 2,702. So it's important to note that unemployment stats only report those individuals who are employed or who are jobless looking for a job and are available for that work. The unemployment stats do not involve people who are not in the labor force. So I just wanted to make a note of that. The Director of Research and Analytics, Dale Knapp, that name may be familiar to you. He does share that Wisconsin businesses are facing a worker shortage that could persist for decades, right? This isn't news to us, but it's just We need to get this out in front of us and recognize that this is going to persist, right? And what is the reason behind that? Well, there's several reasons, but just very generally, the state does not have enough young people to replace retiring baby boomers over the next 10 to 15 years. And our migration patterns have not shifted for the better, meaning more folks who are in the labor pool are leaving the state. Some factors impacting this include lack of housing and childcare issues, among others. Exacerbate that with COVID-19, and employers are in a real pickle. So our comprehensive approach here. What are employers to do? We do understand that this is not isolated to the public sector or even our region. Employers across multiple sectors are struggling to hire, and we're all struggling at the same time. In addition, a record number of Americans are leaving their jobs, 4.4 million in September alone. So that is a little bit different from that October number shared earlier. The challenges
Tomorrow I have my lab.
The challenges that we are facing with workforce retention are not the same as they have been in previous years, and we recognize that. Employees' attitudes towards the work in general has changed amongst the during the pandemic. It has challenged us to think more broadly in terms of recruiting and attracting talent. So those rigid requirements of certain roles may no longer apply, requiring us to shift from the Great Recession. If you recall, there was a mindset during the Great Recession. We need to shift away from that, and I believe that we have been. And we're shifting to the Great Resignation mindset, right? So it is no longer feasible to believe that we can return to operating as we did pre-pandemic. It is critical that we approach the issue with shared accountability, because we know that the labor market is ever changing, and so we have needed to change the way we recruit. It goes without saying that we continue to fine-tune the way in which we engage employees. Through a multi-pronged approach, we have been developing strategies to reimagine our total rewards. So the question is, what is important to our workforce today, and what can we as the employer provide to convey the value that our people bring to this organization and our community? We will be taking a deep dive into our job descriptions and incorporate the skills needed to face the challenges of continual change and learning. The job description should speak to the way that we get our work accomplished. Throughout our organization, there are teams working collaboratively to align our purpose in county government with the values of the organization, while providing opportunities for our workforce to experience career development and growth. A few ways that we can demonstrate this proactive approach is through our adaptiveness in most recent months. So we have brought forward several policy updates to better align with the needs of our organization and its people. Some of these include increased flexibility, the remote work option, telecommuting, kind of flexing some hours if it suits the operations of the department. 2 weeks of paid Wisconsin medical leave was approved, and also paid time off banks upon hire, just to name a few things that we've been working on. So while the work has already begun, we intend to make great strides in 22 by accomplishing the basic work in the area of total rewards strategy, since we understand that simply paying people more will not solve our labor shortage. So to go back to that very basic total rewards, it's certainly something that, a phrase that was coined that I'm sure you folks have heard several times over and over again. So I'll just briefly kind of describe what that means. It is the combination of benefits and compensation that our employees receive. This can include wages, paid time off, holiday, as well as awards and recognition, workplace flexibility, and career opportunities. It may also refer to the combined intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, or the value that an employee perceives. It includes the intangibles that employees are desiring, So, for instance, that flexibility in the workplace. Does my supervisor trust me to do my work and do it well, or are they micromanaging me, right? Health insurance, that may not be a benefit for some employees. They may not elect it. So how do we attract and retain those folks in other ways? Year over year, we have continued to assess and evaluate our health insurance plans, our policies and processes, the vendors and providers that we work with, as well as our effectiveness with communication and relationship building, and then also strengthening those relationships. These are only a few areas of focus. However, we cannot discount the amount of time and resources that are needed to make forward movement in these areas. You likely recall during the budget process, HR had allocated $15,000 to a performance-based transformational consultation project. A lot of words to say, a benchmarking of our total rewards. So in partnership with our benefits broker, J.A. Counter, we are currently in the process of conducting some benchmarking to provide us with a solid understanding of how we compare to competing organizations, okay? And with that data, we will have the foundation necessary to begin to address any pay structure issues that exist and develop a plan for how to mitigate future issues that may be on the horizon. Please note, this is not a compensation study, nor a pay schedule overhaul. It is simply a project that will identify how we compare to market and where and what areas we are not aligned, okay? It is the basis for the creation of a phased strategy for implementation of next steps to ensure market competitiveness. It's also noted there, our second bullet there, analysis of our benefit structure. So that's going to involve numerous items, including our employee policy manual, policies and practices on performance measurements, management, and evaluations, our benefits plans, which benefits are folks enrolled in, where do they find value in those benefits, tools for our leaders to strengthen relationships with their teams, and so on and so forth. In addition to these areas of focus, we do recognize that our job descriptions are incredibly outdated. The way they are written and interpreted no longer apply to how we approach accomplishing our work. The goal here is to streamline these documents to facilitate and foster adaptiveness, creative approaches, and innovative collaboration amongst our teams. So there is planning happening in every department, in every unit. While recovering from an unpredictable hurdle, our teams continue to address the emerging issues as well. These are working documents, please keep in mind, just a snapshot in time to help us identify our next steps. That is why it is so important organization remains flexible and adaptive. So I had Kathryn. What would you like to add?
Thank you. I think that this is one more step that the county as an employer is taking to ensure that we retain our competitiveness in the labor market and that we assist all of our team players in succeeding in their roles. So the board can look forward to future presentations as this work gets underway and updates throughout the year in 2022.
Thank you. Next is Q3 financials update from Finance Director Kirk.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. Samantha, are you able to show the reports at all that I submitted?
I can. Just give me a little bit to find them unless you have them right away.
No, I don't, sorry, but in the beginning I'll start off anyway. So I appreciate the opportunity this evening to review with you high-level financial results from Q3, along with providing some supporting context, in addition to reviewing an updated projection of year-end results for 2021. So this evening we'll be reviewing two reports that were sent out earlier and should be part of your agenda package. I would like to say, though, in addition, I really would encourage all of you to review my Q3 Director's Report, along with other Q3 financial reports that can be found under Report Central. If you go to the Report Central tab under Countywide and 2021 Reports, you will see additional reports for Q3 as well as the Director's Report. So before we begin, I would like to say at a high level, I think that the county is, through Q3, is in a much stronger financial position than it was a year ago. Certainly, a contributing factor to that is the increase we've seen in sales tax collection. But in addition, I think we continue to experience diligent fiscal management of expenditures. And as a result of that, our cash position is stronger. And as we'll discuss later in the projected 2021 year-end results, we'll see, significant positive improvement, particularly in the general fund balance. The first report we're going to look at here and discuss, it's on the screen right now, is a year-to-year fund balance report. So it's a new report that we're producing out of our general ledger system. And this is comparing by fund balance revenues and expenditures from the current quarter of Q3 21 versus Q3 20. And it provides a relative overview of revenue and expenditures for each of the funds, and also provides a high-level comparative view of activity through the third quarter. Again, I would ask if you have questions in more detail that please review the director's report, because in that report you'll see more granularity relative to the revenue types and expenditure types as well. But in terms of revenue, the report indicates that most of the funds are showing an increase in revenue year to year. In particular, the two funds that often get attention are the general fund and the human services fund. And you can see the general services fund year to year is up about $2.7 million in revenue. And the human services fund is up about 1.7 million. Now, more than half of the general fund increase in revenue is attributed to the increase in sales tax collections. And in the human services fund, much of that increase is relative to advance payment that was implemented by the state of Wisconsin in 2021, advance payment for the CCS WMCR amounts that we've spoken about many times in terms of the cash flow discrepancy that existed with that, and the state implemented an advance payment process in 2021. So that is the primary driver of why that revenue increase is showing up so far. You'll also note that debt service looks like it has a fairly significant increase in year-to-year revenue, and that's really a result of the refunding activity that we've done during 2021. If you recall, we've done multiple refundings as we've been able to take advantage of some of the lower interest rates that existed in the market. And so a lot of that's attributed to just that bond refunding, and so isn't necessarily a true increase in revenue. And then lastly, I'd want to point out that the highway revenue fund looks like it's down $4.8 million, but that's really a result of a change in the way that they're recording their cost pools in billing for work performed during 2021 to more of a net expenditure approach. And so therefore that $4.8 million is really not a decrease that's of any concern. If you look at the expenditure side, you can see that many funds also had an increase in expenditures year to year, but in almost all cases, or I'd say most cases, those increases in expenditures was less than the increase in revenue. Thus, we still had a positive net impact when you look at it from a total fund perspective. As you can see, the general fund expenditures are up year on year about $1.4 million. The biggest contributor to that really is personnel costs. Our personnel costs are up year on year. Again, if you recall, we had furloughs and other activities going on last year, and as well as just increases in health insurance and wages. So that increase in the personnel costs alone is about $500,000 to $600,000 of that variance. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything really too noteworthy. The human service expenditures are up year to year, but that's not really surprising given they've had increased service activity in 2021 versus 2020. The highway is down approximately $2.4 million, but again, that was largely attributed to some of those changes going on in the way that they were recording those cost pools. So some of those numbers, while they may look a little strange just on a year-to-year comparison, it's not exactly comparing apples to apples. So nothing I would say at this point to be concerned with. Samantha, if you could go to the next page, please. So if you look at it from a net perspective, netting out the revenue and expenditures, here I wanted to point out, again, some of those major funds that we talk about, but in particular, the general fund. You see the general fund last year at the end of Q3, we're in a $1.1 million deficit position. And now we're in, at the end of Q3, in a little over $200,000 surplus condition. That's not typical for us to be in a surplus, quite honestly, at the end of Q3. Usually we you have some lagging revenues that occur even in the general fund. But that's really, again, largely attributed to the sales tax. Through Q3, the sales tax collections were approximately $1.3 million higher than they were through Q3 of 2020. So a lot of that swing, as you can tell, is really attributed to the increase in sales tax. The next line, the federal revenue sharing, has to do with the ARPA funds. Again, the Human Service Fund, from a net perspective, looks like it's in a lower deficit position through the current year. But again, if you take into account the advance payment that was received, it would actually make that deficit larger year to year. So that's why you sometimes have to know a little bit more behind what's behind the numbers in a little context. So again, I'm not concerned with that. That's certainly there'll be increased activity and there'll be revenue to follow. So I think that's concerning at this point. And then kind of lastly, again, the highway fund looks like it's at or has been typically at a surplus condition. It was a slight surplus last year at this time. You see it shows a $2.2 million deficit. Again, that's really more timing than anything else, and nothing there that I would think would be of any concern. So, before I go on to the next report, which has to do with the projected fund balance, particularly the general fund, I just want to pause to see if there are any questions.
Just a reminder, supervisors, please use the raised hand function. I see none, Norb. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Smart. Okay, so moving on to the next report. The next report is a projection of where we will end 2021 for the various funds. The first page is the general fund balance. So for some context, this report is based on data supplied by each department relative to their projected year-end results. So the ask of the department was to provide 3 scenarios of projections: best case, worst case, and most likely. And this was very similar to an exercise that we completed multiple times in 2020 as we were trying to assess the impact of the pandemic. So the departments are very familiar with the process. And then the report that we're going to be talking about and looking at is reflective of the most likely scenarios supplied by the department. So the first page is the general fund, which we often spend most of our time actually talking about. And if you start at the top of the report, you'll see that
Excuse me, Norb.
Yes.
I see a raised hand from Supervisor Stelches.
Okay.
Supervisor Stelches, did you wish to address something already presented?
I did. I wanted on the previous report, but I can hold it if you wish.
Then why don't you go ahead with your question? We'll come back to Director.
Okay. On the previous report, I would like an explanation on the other capital projects that actually show a surplus of 30 million.
Yeah, so that's primarily the bond activity that we've had. You know, we borrowed for our normal capital in 2021, as well as the borrowing for the highway building. And so at this point, we haven't expended any expended much of that capital, quite honestly. So that's why it looks like it's in a significant surplus position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Kirk.
Yeah. So if you start at the top of the report, you'll see we start with our general fund balance unassigned. So that's like our unassigned reserve, if you will. And then the net estimated department activity, which is highlighted below. So the culmination of the most likely scenarios provided by department would show a projected surplus of relatively close to $3.9 million. Okay, which is very significant. The next line, you'll see some part of the general fund as a normal course of business in our budget. We assign that. So that's essentially assigned and not available or unassigned. So based on this analysis provided by departments, we would potentially end 2021 with a general fund unassigned balance of $17.5 million. Now, we always look at what that unassigned fund balance is relative to what our general fund expenditures are. And the 2022 budgeted general fund expenditures are 39.9 million. So we would be at a relative reserve position of 43.9%. And again, we'd be increasing our general fund by 3.4 million on a net basis. We do have a general, or excuse me, not a general, we have a fund balance policy, and there are three significant elements to that general fund policy. One is that there is a reference to having a desire to have a minimum of at least 20% and a targeted value of 30% of the next year's general fund expenditures. But there's also reference to the debt service payment. And so the way the fund balance policy is addressed is it's minimum of 20% or the debt service payment, whichever is higher. And in our case, the debt service payment is actually higher than even the 30%. So the debt service payment is $15.9 million for 2022. We're projecting to end at 17.5 million. So we would not be in any violation of our fund balance policy. So that's an important aspect. And that's important as later in the year when in 2022, when we have our annual conversation with Moody's, and we're looking at bond ratings. They have often expressed concern about our general fund balance. So I look forward to our conversation next year if we in fact end 2021 in this kind of position. So then the bottom part of the report shows the estimated department activity by department. And as you'll note, there are only 5 departments that are showing a projected most likely deficit position for activity. And most of those are relative to just lower activity. I mean, clerk of courts, for example, is just relative to lower activity. They're just, the court system isn't quite back up to where it was. And so that's a result of that. That's the largest one. The other ones on here are relatively small in nature. And then the treasurer, I think we've talked about on an occasion, our interest income certainly is less than what we were expecting or hoping to in terms of the budget. The interest rates have been relatively low, so that's what's driving the projected deficit for the Treasury Department. You also see some departments that are projecting some relatively high surpluses. For instance, the Register of Deeds, there's still a lot of activity going on in the Register of Deeds where they're able to get fees. And then the Sheriff's Department is predicting or projecting a relatively significant amount of surplus, largely due to a lower personnel cost that they're seeing in 2021. So all in all, we're at a good place in terms of projections. The relative range of the projections for the departments was best case was surplus of 4.7 million, and worst case was a surplus of 1.7 million. So even in the department's worst case scenario, if we rolled all those up, it would still be a projected surplus. And as I said, we're rolling up about 3.9 million. So departments are leaning towards their most likely scenario being closer to their best case scenario than certainly their worst case. So
Thank you.
in the non-departmental area, that's the most sizable. If you see surplus, $2.5 million, that is where we have the sales tax. So that's based on a projection of sales tax to be $12.3 million. And that would be almost $1.9 million, somewhere between 1.8 and $1.9 million greater than what was in our budget. So that's the majority of that change. In addition, what falls in that category is the $300,000 of contingency that we set aside every year, and that would assume that we would release that $300,000. And one of the reports that the board will see this evening has to do with the contingency, and you can see that you will be able to see that we have spent none of the contingency funds so far in 2021. So the next page, if you would, Samantha. Is a look at the other funds, as well as a little bit of context in the last time a projection was done was part of the budget process. So in May, when departments were calculating and working on their budgets, they also provided a projection, and you can see on the general fund at that time when we rolled it up, we were projecting a $2.1 million surplus, and again now we're at 3.8 million. You see the other funds, ADRC, airport and highway, and you can see that in a couple of cases there's kind of some significant shifts relative to the budget projection, but they're all still projecting a surplus for 2021. And then the last report I won't spend any time on, but if you, for your review, is the actual 3 scenarios provided by each department, their worst case, their best case, and their most likely. And so you can see for any of the departments that you might have an interest in, what was that range and what were the relative numbers. And that is the extent of what I wanted to report on tonight.
Are there any questions, supervisors? I see no hands raised. Thank you, Director Kirk.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, hold on. Next on our agenda, we have the written reports. You have in your packet reports from the Finance Department on the contingency fund and the October vouchers, and also department third quarter reports, the link to the report central. Are there any questions related to the written reports? I see none. Thank you. Next on our agenda is presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. You have in your packet the October 2021 letter to County Board Supervisors from the Town of Pleasant Valley Town Board, and also the November 11th, 2021 letter to supervisors from the Town of Pleasant Valley Town Board. Both of these are relevant to the rezoning applications, and we'll assume that that members have read that and are prepared to take that into consideration. Okay. Next on our agenda from the and first reading of ordinances, file 64.
An ordinance amending section 2.04.010B of the code. Rule 1, meetings, creating section 2.04.130C of the code. Rule 13, diligent committee service.
This item is here for first reading, It will come back to the board in our next meeting on December the 21st. Next, in section 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160, and second reading of ordinances. First, from the Committees on Administration and Finance and Budget, file number 73.
A resolution amending the library allocation in the annual budget resolution.
Sorry, I'm catching up. Motion?
Pagonis moves.
Pagonis moves. Second?
Wilkie seconds.
Wilkie seconds. Thank you. Explanation, I think for this, Supervisor Pagonis, will you provide?
Sure.
Thank you.
We've talked about this before, that there is, even though it says intermunicipal library, it means intramunicipal library services. So within the municipalities, the individuals, for example, who live in Eau Claire might use the Altoona Library. Individuals who live in the town of Augusta might use the Fall Creek Library. And this is all based on circulation statistics. So what was initially presented was the amount that the library should receive. And instead, what should have been presented is the amount that they have to pay out. So that's the correction. The total amount is the same. It's part of the library plan that these finances occur. You'll note Fairchild's not part of it because they opt out every year, and next year Fall Creek will opt out.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there any discussion? I see none.
Chair Smyer, this passed yesterday in the Committee of Finance and Budget on a vote of 4-0. We had one person absent.
Thank you. I think from the Committee on Administration, the vote was unanimous also. So at this point, we will vote on file 73. All those.
Chair Smyer, I'm sorry to be a pain here, but
You're not a pain.
this may be considered a budget adjustment because it is amending the annual budget resolution. And so I apologize, but I believe we will need a roll call vote and 2/3 vote on this.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Clerk McDonald, will you please take the roll call vote?
Supervisor Gibson,
Aye.
McKinney,
Aye.
Knight,
Yes.
Pagonis,
Aye.
Anton,
He's muted.
Supervisor Anton. *6 to unmute Supervisor Anton.
Yes.
Thank you. Zook,
Yes.
Jilson, Jilson, come back. Stelgis,
Yes.
Lowry,
Aye.
Coffee,
Yes.
Otto,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Gatlin,
Aye.
Smyer,
Aye.
Hambuck Boyle,
Aye.
Neiman,
Aye.
Dunning,
Aye.
Wilkie,
Aye.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckfield,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Roberts. Oops, sorry, Roberts is absent. Kronk,
Yes.
Christofferson,
Yes.
Then back to Supervisor Chilson.
Yes.
Thank you. 28 yeses, 1 absent.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next on our agenda, the chair is going to take up the addendum. And the addendum comes from the Committee on Finance and Budget. Supervisor Pagonis, are you prepared for this?
Am.
Okay, good. First is file 71.
A resolution authorizing the sale of tax deed property to former owners James and Mary Knickerbocker for $25,818.79. Directing Corporation Counsel to prepare a quitclaim deed on the described property and directing the County Clerk to execute said quitclaim deed on behalf of Eau Claire County.
Thank you. Motion.
Motion by Leary.
Gatlin
Gatlin second.
Leary moves, Gatlin seconds. Background, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. This is pretty straightforward. Both county code and state statute requires that if a former owner whose home has been taken on tax deed requests to purchase it back, that they are given primary consideration. The amount that the Knickerbockers will be paying, it was their home. This is actually the second time that it has gone to tax deed sale. But the amount that they have to relinquish to the county to have it returned to them, or they have already done this, is the $25,818. That amount covers all of the taxes, past taxes, penalty, and interest that were incurred by the county. We are required to do this, and I believe Clerk McDonald will also want a roll call vote on this.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? I see no hands raised. Clerk McDonald, please do the roll call vote.
Gibson.
Aye.
McKinney.
Aye.
Knight.
Yes.
Pagonis.
Aye.
Anton.
Aye.
Zook.
Yes.
Chilson.
Yes.
Stelgis.
Yes.
Mowry.
Yes.
Coffee.
Yes.
Otto.
Yes.
Bates.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
Gatlin.
Yes.
Smyer.
Please hold mine to last.
Hambuck Boyle.
Yes.
Neiman.
Aye.
Dunning.
Yes.
Wilkie.
Aye.
Anderson.
Yes.
Beckfield.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Leary.
Yes.
DeLuca.
Yes.
Jansen.
Yes.
Rofnagel.
Yes.
Frank. Did you say yes?
Yes.
And Christofferson.
Yes.
And Smyer.
Yes.
28. Yes,
motion-
1 absent.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is file 75.
A resolution, the approval of 2021 gifts, grants, and/or donations to Eau Claire County.
Motion.
Supervisor Wilkie moves for approval.
Wilkie moves. Is that a second, Supervisor Waits?
Bates, please.
Thank you. Okay. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are gifts and grants that have been received already during 2021, and given it's December, they've probably already been spent. As this board well knows, that any grant that's received is designated for a specific use. That's how grants are applied and received. And so these are already part of the 2021 budget, and I believe that the expenditures have probably occurred.
Thank you. Questions, discussion?
Supervisor Cronk with a question.
Well, please use the raised hand function.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's all right. I got it now. That's just to maintain some order. So go ahead, Supervisor Craddock.
Thank you. I've made this motion before, a request to make a motion to separate these by departments, and I would ask to do so again tonight.
Ordinarily,
we've actually done it. We've actually done it in the past. We have and took a vote to do so.
no, we can. I'm sorry.
No,
You are correct. We can separate. The chair is mulling it over. I'd be interested in feedback from the board to help me in my decision.
Chair Smyer, this is Supervisor Pagonis. My response would be, we've got a single resolution before us that was, and I've neglected to say it was voted on yesterday in a committee on finance and budget, and it passed 4-0. I think it would have to come back as separate motions or separate resolutions if we wanted to split out the content. And certainly Attorney Sullivan could weigh in on that, but we've got a single resolution in front of us. I think it would be difficult to split out.
That may be accurate. I'm not positive, but I'll ask Corp Counsel for advice on that.
I would agree with Supervisor Pagonis that there is a single resolution before the board. They would have to come back as individual resolutions for either the departments or for the grants. But at this time, the resolution as put forth before the board is one resolution accepting all these grants. There's been a motion to bring it forward to the board and also a second. So I think that the chair is appropriate in taking it forward for discussion and eventually a vote.
Thank you. What would be?
If I may make one more point, if we do not vote on this and the court, the chair wishes to delay it, it would have to go back to finance for reconsideration as well, because they would be separate resolutions.
Right, that's clear. Thank you. Corp Counsel or Supervisor Pagonis, what would be the effect of rejecting this resolution, the effect on the grants? What would happen?
The grants have been received and spent. This is a resolution to modify the 2021 budget. This wouldn't come back likely until sometime in January, so it would be well, it's already retrospective.
So the effect would not be to block, prevent, or delay any of the grants. It's an adjustment to budget.
That is my reading of it, because it specifically says authorize amending the departmental revenue and expenditure budgets for additional grant revenues received year to date. It's specific in the resolution. These are grant awards received year to date.
Thank you.
Essentially, this is a bookkeeping matter is what it is.
Oh, I see some raised hands. I'm sorry. Hold on just a moment. Supervisor Christopherson first, followed by Supervisor Mowry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to speak to support Supervisor Cronk's concerns in the future. I'd like to see these things separated out for multiple reasons.
Could you provide the reason?
I think we've discussed these issues in the past. There's certain, especially the Sheriff's Department funding issues. As you heard from the BICOP speaker at the beginning of our meeting, the concerns of the funding that we are supporting as a board, I think needs to be discussed separately than the other matters that are in this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Mowry.
Yes, it helps to hear what Corporation Counsel Sullivan said, that this is just more of a counting kind of approval. But is that the case, that the county board has no approval process for grants received by departments? Or are we, or do we have some sort of oversight? It would make more sense to me if we approved the grants as they were obtained rather than after they were spent.
That, as I understand it, that's a function of the department. And when grants are submitted, for example, from the sheriff's department, the sheriff signs off and I sign off as chair. So it's not a function of the board to review all the grants. That's my understanding. Is that correct? Supervisor Bergonis, is that correct?
Chair Smeyer, we've talked many times about the potentiality of board members attempting to micromanage departments. And it's up to a department to determine what is an appropriate grant to apply for. And as I said, grants are very specific in their usage. So, you know, if county board supervisors want to assess every single grant and donation and application for outside revenue, you know, that's a decision that would have had to have been made prior to the 2022 budget being assessed. So I think that I think it's too late to ask that.
Thank you for your feedback. Supervisor Wilkie. Are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Corp Counsel addressed what I was going to say. This is really a matter of housekeeping for departments. Sometimes they get new grants. Most of this is that the grants came in at a higher level and your housekeeping to bring your budget in line with what the actual is going to be. It doesn't change anything. I suppose if for some reason you wanted to vote no, you're really just cleaning up your budget.
Do the grants not go through the oversight committees?
Yes, they do go through the oversight committees when they, at least in judicial law, it's brought to our attention when grants are applied for. And many of these, if not all of them, could be the case. There was in the budget that was approved by the board, but grants, sometimes you get additional money.
When as chair, I sign off on these grants. That is my assumption. It's been reviewed by the oversight committee and the director of that department. So thank you, Supervisor Wilkie. Supervisor Dunning.
Chairman Smeyer. My question goes back to what Supervisor Christopherson was talking about as the reason for this, and maybe Supervisor Kronk could explain the reasons why we've done it in the past and why she would prefer to do that now. I guess I'm since we are at the end of the year and the grants are in, I'm not certain what we will do, but I could be persuaded. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dunning. Let's go back. Supervisor Kronk, the request that you were making, was it your intention that the effect of your request would be that the grant would not be received or used? Or was it your understanding that this is an accounting process and the grant money has already been expended? Could you clarify your position?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I guess, you know, this has been separated out in the past, and I've made the request for multiple reasons. One, I guess I'm not sure when would be the appropriate, and without trying to micromanage any department, when would be the appropriate time to review this? Because I understand that it's accounting and it's quote unquote, you know, housekeeping. However, I take issue representing many of the constituents that I do, that I have to vote on, let's say, a Beaver Creek grant or a Meals on Wheels grant, along with a SWAT team grant, a drug trafficking grant, a methamphetamine grant, an anti-heroin grant, and a HIDA grant, especially in light of our county making a commitment to equity. We just heard from HR talking about, looking for ways to recruit and keep talent. And when I think about the people that are affected by the work done by some of these grants, and perhaps we could use some more transparency and some more data that's been requested from some of these departments that are listed receiving these grants that I don't have to reference. I don't have that data. It seems like we're doing this on the back end. And when I look at sort of the militarization or the acceptance of some of the equipment that comes into the department, and I did go through the Citizens Police Academy to try to learn more. It seems like if we're going into the area of increasing the militarization, then we're going to do the opposite of what it seems like the county's trying to do to create equity or ensure equity, especially when we look at the rates of who is being incarcerated or who may be interacting with some of these departments. One more point, and when we look at some of the points that were brought forward by the public comment earlier, I think about if we're looking at the holistic health of our community and we're saying that yes, we do have serious issues with substances, are we looking at that as a crime, or are we looking at that as we need to be responding to that in a public health setting? And I will say, as we add more militarization to these departments, as we add more requests to get drugs off the streets and handle substance use within our community, we don't seem to be making a dent. And I'll say that because our Department of Corrections, our state prison system right now has to hire an outside agency, an out of state entity.
Excuse me, Supervisor Cronk. Supervisor Cronk, excuse me. You're really wandering off of the agenda topic. It's a broader issue that you're discussing.
But if we're accepting grants, with all due respect, Chair Smyer, if we're accepting grants or monies to be funding
the grants have already been accepted, expended, and used.
So to set precedent then for the future, when would be an appropriate time to review these? Because I would contend to say that not all money received to the counties is quote unquote good money. And I stand by that.
I understand that. To answer your question, I think that the point at which the grants are considered and mulled and so on is with the oversight committees, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be an accurate statement? Supervisor Wilkie, I'll ask you that question.
I believe that would be accurate, but it also would be at a point of entry at budget time, as when if you want to change a revenue stream, you could do it there as well. But at the committee level, it starts first in all committees.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Wilkie. Supervisor Bates, would you have any?
It would seem to me that one of the comments that was made was basically that this is the wrong end of the process to be addressing this. If there are concerns that funding that is being sought does not seem to match or may even be against policies that are being developed for specific purposes, that needs to be addressed at the time that the grant is applied for. I don't see it can be addressed after the money has been spent.
Well, I think we've established that, yes. Okay, thank you. I just thought I would check with some of the chairs of some of the oversight committees. So Supervisor Cronk, the chair is going to reject your request, but suggest that we explore the topic of your concern. Perhaps that could be taken up with the Committee on Administration.
Yeah.
So as a point. And I would invite you to come to the Committee on Administration for that discussion. Okay? We're going to proceed. Sorry, I have to catch up here. We're going to proceed with the vote on file 75. Supervisor Pagonis, do we have to have the same consideration here because it's some adjustment, or?
Yes. So I would request a roll call vote.
Thank you. We'll do that. Clerk McDonald, will you please take a roll call vote on this?
Gibson,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Pagonis,
Yes.
Anton,
He's muted.
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Zook,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Stelgis,
Yes.
Lowry,
Yes.
Coffee,
Yes.
Otto,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Smyer,
Take mine last, please.
last, sorry. Hambuck Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning,
Yes.
Wilkie,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Beckfield,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Frank,
No.
Christofferson.
No.
We have 25 yeses and 3 nos.
The motion passes. Thank you, supervisors. We'll now go back to our regular agenda. From the Committee on Planning and Development, file 61.
An ordinance amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Pleasant Valley.
Motion?
Motion by Leary.
Chair
Moved by-
Beckfield.
Moved by Leary, second by Beckfield. Thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Smyer. This was to rezone 64 acres from A2 to RH for developing the single-family resident subdivision. The land use plans, both Eau Claire County and the town of Pleasant Valley's future land use maps, both include the property in the rural residential planning area. Staff's conclusions and recommendations is that the staff finds that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan recognizes that the proposed RH zoning district is consistent within the mapped future land use designation. The town board for Pleasant Valley, they held their public hearing and they voted 3-0 in favor. The Planning and Development Committee, we held our public hearing and we voted 3-2 in favor.
Thank you. The chair reminds the members that what we're voting on here is only the rezoning application. Any considerations of project or uses of the land and so on, that follows the rezoning. So any vote should be based on the requirements for a rezoning.
Chair Smyer, this is Tim Sullivan.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And I think that, and we probably want to confirm this with Supervisor Gibson and or Director Esslinger, who I see is also online. But there was a protest petition, I believe, filed with this matter, and it was verified, which means that the vote would need to be 3/4 of those present, and that it would need to be by a roll call vote.
Thank you. Let me go back to my comment. I was reminding you of the content of the communications that we have regarding this, and also our past experience. This is a rezoning application. It is not an application regarding the project. The project is not relevant to this vote. So, are there any questions, or is there any further discussion?
Chair Schmeier?
Chair Gibson, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, I'd just like to remind everyone that, as you stated, this is rezoning only. As far as the plat, that will come back to the Planning and Development Committee for a preliminary review approval and a final approval. There are also several requirements that need to be met after the rezoning is approved. There are permits that need to be required in order to move on.
Thank you. Supervisor Chilson. I think you're.
Thank you, Chair Schmeier. I did want to speak to this. So this rezone is in my area. It's in my district. I have had several of the residents reach out to me in opposition and voice concerns about the project. I did read the letter sent to me by the developer, and I read the points that they made for the arguments to move forward with the rezone. One of them being a low-cost alternative for people to build a house. I don't really see that is that argument makes sense to me, because I don't see low-cost housing in that Pleasant Valley development area. And the other thing that was brought up in the paperwork was that the land is not suitable for farming. Most of the land in Pleasant Valley is a sandier condition soil, as is the land in my property that is used every year for either corn or soybeans. And the corn crop this year was over 9 feet tall on my property. So under the right conditions, the right precipitation, any of the land there is usable and suitable for farming. And my vote tonight is going to be no on this, for the reasons that I listed earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Coffey.
Thank you, Chair Schmeier. I'm really torn by this development. I think that Cody and his staff had done an excellent job of communicating with county supervisors to talk about it, and I really appreciate the calmness and the expertise they've had in talking about it. I also am a bit worried about our lakes, and specifically creeks and rivers that run into these lakes and Lowe's Creek watershed. I did call Dan Zur today, who is with UW Extension Madison. He works a lot in the watersheds, and he said that if 25% or higher impervious property is next to or in the watershed, it will kill the trout. And I know when I talked to Sean about impervious, he did say, who is the engineer for the project, he spoke to me about sandy soils, which give us good infiltration plus retention ponds. When I spoke to Liz Fagan from Land Conservation, she is a bit concerned about the size of the retention pond and keeping that water so it isn't getting into the trout stream. So I think we need to be more forward thinking and look at the big picture about the Lowe's Creek watershed. So I
I would like to move to table the rezoning until we determine what percentage of Lowe's Creek watershed is already impervious, and then work with the planning and development to decide about how much residential density limits need to be there for the remaining developable area in the Lowe's Creek watershed.
Supervisor Coffey, I would advise you against making a motion to table. It has the opposite effect of what you intend.
Okay, okay.
A motion.
will go ahead.
A motion to postpone to a particular time would
Okay.
probably have the effect that you're looking for. However, I want to caution you that the items that you're asking for to be postponed until can only occur after the rezoning has been approved.
Ah, okay.
So
Well,
that has
then
the
I
project.
will go not in support then of the project.
You know, if not in support of the rezoning, the project is not relevant to this discussion tonight.
The rezoning. Thank you.
Okay. Gosh, we have a whole bunch of people. Supervisor Knight.
Yes, I'm going to vote in favor of the rezoning. I think the county staff got it right. I think people who are going to be living here are basically city folks who work in the city, who go to the city for entertainment, medical care, food, car repairs, church, whatever. I think and actually I fall into this category. I live on a 1-acre plot in town of Seymour too. I think it makes sense to have us as close to the city as possible. I look at a rejection of this, and frankly, our Orchard Hill vote is a pro-sprawl vote. We're saying, no, you can't have housing density like that in the rural area. You got to build your house 15, 20, 25 miles out, put it on a 5-acre parcel. That's urban sprawl. I think there's a reason that the county staff recommended this. I think they made the right choice. I guess I'm talking about the project now. Regarding Lowe's Creek, I suspect I spent more time fishing it than anyone else here. It's a little bit of a fixer-upper of a trout stream. It's a class 2, probably should be a class 3. Has a few very big trout, low trout density. Not much natural reproduction, a little bit. Some brook trout come in from Clear Creek upstream. I don't see this project with 2 acres per home unless the homeowners go wild and pave over their lots. I don't see that as having a big effect on groundwater recharge or runoff. I understand there's going to be the required settling basins. I wish they would go even further and have some natural vegetation.
Again, Supervisor Knight, excuse me, you're addressing a project.
Okay.
That's not
okay.
relevant.
I plan to vote in favor of the rezoning.
Thank you. Supervisor Leary.
Mr. Chair, I was one on the Planning and Development Committee, and I was one of the votes in favor of the rezoning. I think the people involved in planning and development, they were very thorough in their review. And when you look at, and they showed us maps of the whole surrounding area as well, and it fits in the comprehensive plan very neatly as the rezoned parcel. And so it just seems a logical move. I can understand folks, they always like things to remain the same, but frankly, unless you own the land, you don't necessarily control the land. So I would urge your support. And as Supervisor Gibson mentioned earlier, there's lots of other steps. So it may not end up being quite as many homes because of other permits and regulations. So I would urge your support.
Thank you. Supervisor Stelches.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would share some of the comments that other supervisors have made. This has been a particularly difficult decision for me. I have no doubt that both our planning staff and the planning committee and the township have done their due diligence. And I think that I also agree with Supervisor Coffey that the proposed developers have done a great job communicating, as have the persons in opposition. And so I think it's been very rational discussion. And I think all the boxes have been checked. And I think this comes down to a decision for me that this is something that we can do. It's entirely permissible. The only question is, should we? And so I have two concerns that are influencing my vote. The first one is purely based on rezoning. So the only reason that we are considering rezoning this is so that we can enhance the value of the land for the seller. The seller owns this land, and he could sell it today without rezoning, but he's chosen not to do that. So they come to us and say, please rezone my property because then I can sell it for more. And if we do that, and I look at the map, particularly on page 25 of our packet, I see that there's lots of other people with A2 properties right near that. And so why shouldn't their land be enhanced at the same time? Why shouldn't we make it all RH? And that way, this petitioner is not getting an advantage from the county. And so to me, it's morally not correct to enhance the sale value of the land for that person. Now, and I, from the developer standpoint, I assume they don't want to buy the land unless it's rezoned. Well, perhaps they should take the risk and buy it as it is, and then they take the risk of the rezone. Maybe that's not a good business decision, but to me, that's a better moral argument. So I oppose this based on the fact that the rezone is strictly to enhance the value of the land. And I do not think that we in the county are in the business of enhancing the value. The second concern that I have is fragmentation. And contrary to what you might think, I'm actually in favor of high density. I think that this is actually a very good location for residential development. As other people have pointed out, it's close to the major state highway, for all the other reasons. But if you look at on page 25, if you want to see what fragmentation looks like, look over on the east side of Lowe's Creek with all these slices of RH housing going against Lowe's Creek. Every one of those breaks up for example, the corridor that goes down through the creek valley there. And if we keep large lot sizes, it's not sustainable to continue to supply houses for our growing population. The lots need to be smaller. So the 1.5 acre lots, probably a pretty reasonable thing. What I object to is filling up the entire space with 1.5 acre lots. I would much more be in favor of a cluster type concept where instead of 40 homes on there, you put 20 1.5 acre lots, and you took the rest of the land and you dedicated it as public space that was forever undeveloped, that would connect to forever undeveloped areas. And one person asked, if you don't approve this, what would you approve? Well, that's exactly what I would approve, is if someone came to me, first of all, and said, I'm rezoning this land and I'm going to hold it for X number of years. So I'm not just rezoning it to flip it for profit. To me, if they didn't do that, then maybe I could go along with the rezoning. Secondly, if they said, I promise to dedicate half the space to public space and the other half of it I'll make clustered residential areas, I would support that as well. So based on those two objections, I would have to vote no tonight, but if someone came back with those other two changes, I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor.
Chairman Schmeier, I'd like to address that, because everything that Kevin Stell just brought up is further down the process, has nothing to do with the rezoning. And what he is mentioning to be done can be done, but it's going to be farther down the line.
Thank you, Supervisor Gibson. Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The point that I thought is pretty important. I sometimes feel that we're going beyond our authority on some of this, and I understand that zoning is within our authority, but the townships have their comprehensive plan. And so basically what we're doing by refusing to permit the development that the township wants to have is that we are now getting into a fight with the township saying, well, we understand that's your comprehensive plan, but we don't like it. It's not our responsibility to approve their comprehensive plan. They have to do their own jobs. And by us, putting all of these parameters on it, it's really contrary to their autonomy. And I think we're going beyond what our authority is as an organization, as a government entity. The township has a comprehensive plan. One of the developers said, look, if you're not going to allow this rezoning, then the county and all of the townships have to rewrite their comprehensive plans so we don't spend money on things that you're later going to disapprove of. And that's what I think is really important right now. We have a comprehensive plan. This is consistent with our comprehensive plan. The township has a comprehensive plan. And we're 28 people saying, no, we think it's a bad idea. I just don't think we have either A, the knowledge, or B, the authority to be making these level of decisions. The rezoning needs to occur. And then if there are other issues regarding the watershed and the fishing and all that other stuff, then it would come back to us.
Thank you. Supervisor Dunning.
Yes, thank you. I was one of those who voted no in the planning and development. And as we've been going through our discussion, and as I've been listening to the people from the outside and in the phone calls and in the letters and in the emails, I haven't changed my mind, but I'm going to reverse my vote for the opposite reasons of what Supervisor Stell just said. I will be looking very, very hard at what comes back to us as a plat. I agree that if we look at the zoning portion, that falls within our jurisdiction. If we just strictly look at the rezoning, we really don't have a need or a reason to turn it down as of tonight. But we certainly have a reason to look at a dense population on that as we go down the line. If it comes back with areas of that overrun that property, I will be voting against that. So, and I have, talked to the developers when they've called and explained that the density is extremely important on this particular piece of property, and as well as that. So, and I guess I would like an explanation of when I look at the code for what rural homes are. It's 1.5 acres. We're looking at 1 acre or less, and I'm wondering what is the real number. I don't think we can average that and still meet the code. So I'm very concerned about that. So I'll vote yes tonight, but I will be really looking very seriously at any plat that comes back.
Thank you. Supervisor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Supervisor Dunning said quite a bit of what I was going to talk to. I will be supporting this zoning change in order that the process that we have worked diligently over years to put in place and the personnel that we hire that have the expertise to be able to determine whether or not something can happen on this after it has been rezoned. I would vote to support this resolution in order that that process that we've put in place can actually work. Thank you.
Supervisor Neiman.
I'm speaking in favor of the rezoning. I went out to the property today, and it's obvious that all the land around that area is already developed. Just looking at it, I can't see anything else happening there except a cornfield, which people have said that it's a marginal use for. I get the sense that the neighbors just don't want more people out there. They want the rural area to stay just like it was. But I agree with the concept that it's better to have as much density on a piece of land to avoid really destroying parts of land that need to be saved. If there are concerns, I mean, I'm an environmentalist and I'm concerned about the environment, but the rezoning decision is not the place to be making those kinds of judgments. In my mind, if there are concerns to this extent about the environment, then that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when you're revising the comprehensive plan. So I will be voting in favor of this rezoning.
Thank you. Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this was a tough one for me because I look at the, I'm not going to talk about the plat, but I looked at the plat and I saw that there's a lot of density, smaller lots and so forth. And this, I believe, is the area for that to occur.
Call the question, Chairman Smyer. The previous plan has nothing to do with the rezoning. The plat that she's bringing up.
I'm not talking about the plat. I said I'm not going to talk about the plat.
Supervisor Gibson, please hold. Please hold. You have made the statement, call the question, which means it's the discretion of the chair to call the question. This is not a motion. So the chair's decision is to permit Supervisor DeLuca to finish her comment as long as it's relevant to the rezoning. And we have one other request to speak, and we're going to proceed with those. I understand your objection, Supervisor Gibson, but at this time, I'm not going to call the question.
My difficulty with this was more so when I looked at the comprehensive plan for the county, I see that RH is listed at 1 unit for 2 acres. And then I looked at the packet that we received, and the town also, it said 1 acre for 1 unit for 2 acres. Then I went to the town comprehensive plan, and I was looking for where does it say that it's 1 unit for 1.5 acres. I couldn't find it, and I reached out to our staff to find out, can you tell me what page it appears on? And I guess it's not truly in their plan at this point. There was an amendment made in 2012. So I never did find exactly how we got to that 1.5. I know some people want that 5 acre. I don't think they're going to get it. And I don't believe that's the area for the 5 acres.
Excuse me, Supervisor DeLuca, I have to give some credence now to Supervisor Gibson's request because you're addressing the project, not the rezoning.
But part of the rezoning is determining how many units can be put on it.
No, that is not correct. No, that is not correct. That belongs to the second phase. Once the rezoning is approved and the plat is worked on and the permits are sought, that's when that is relevant. Am I correct, Supervisor Gibson?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So I just want to finish just briefly because I actually am supporting this.
Please, very briefly then.
Because I believe that the smaller lots, and I'm going to depend on our staff to make sure, as Supervisor Dunning stated, that they scrutinize very carefully and keep the sensitive items protected. So I actually am supporting this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised. Supervisors, we are going to proceed to the vote on file 61. I'm going to ask the Court Counsel to provide the information about the vote. We have a petition, therefore, what does that mean, Court Counsel?
I think best to have Director Esslinger describe that. There's a petition that falls under 5969 5E 5G of the statutes.
Thank you.
It was a protest of more than 50%, and he can explain the 50% of what. And then essentially what that means is if it's validated by the Planning Development Department, we would have to have 3/4 vote in order to approve the rezoning.
Director Esslinger?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Just to kind of follow up on Corporation Sullivan's summary there of 59 5E and 5G, and when the zoning agency receives or the county, actually the county clerk receives a petition against a rezoning, we have to confirm we're the zoning agency, and we have to verify the signatures that are on the petition in relationship to the said parcel where the request is being made. We did just that. Mr. Michaels and myself, we established that by using our GIS and identifying those property owners and the perimeter of the 64 acres. And the petition does pass, does meet that test, which requires 3/4 vote of the members of the body of the county board that is present and voting. If I understand tonight, there are 28 members that are present. So 3/4 vote would be 21. 21 votes supporting this would pass it. If that does not happen, then the vote does not pass. So that's a summary of 59, 69, 5E, 5, parent 5, and parent G.
Thank you. Any additional comment, Court Counsel?
No additional comment. I agree with that 100%.
Okay. Clerk McDonald, please do the roll call vote.
Supervisor Gibson,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Pagonis,
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Zook,
Yes.
Chilson,
No.
Stelgis,
No.
Maury,
Yes.
Coffee,
No.
Otto,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Hambick Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning,
Yes.
Wilkie,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckfield,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Christofferson,
Yes.
and Smyer.
Yes.
So it's 25 yeses and 3 noes.
The motion passes. Thank you. Next is file 63.
An ordinance amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Otter Creek.
Motion.
By Leary.
Supervisor Leary moves.
Second, Hamback Boyle.
Hambick Boyle seconds. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Yes, this request is to rezone 7.75 acres from AP to A2 Agriculture District to allow immediate family members to construct a single-family residence on the family farm. Both the Eau Claire County and the town of Otter Creek's land use plan support this. Staff's conclusions were that staff finds that the proposed rezoning request conforms with the Eau Claire County Comprehensive Plan, and the Comprehensive Plan recognizes that the proposed A2 zoning district is consistent. The town board held their public hearing and they recommended approval 3-0. The Eau Claire County's Planning Development conducted our required public hearing, and we voted 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. Questions or comment? Before we do questions or comment, Supervisor Chilson, your hand is still raised. Are you commenting now, or did you forget to lower your hand? Thank you. Is there any question? Are there any discussion?
Was there a motion?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
thank
Yep.
Okay. All right. We've established there's a motion in a second. Any discussion? Any questions? I see no hands raised. I believe we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor, excuse me, I have to flip back my screen. All those in favor of file 63, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is file 69.
An ordinance amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Pleasant Valley.
Motion.
Gatlin motion.
Gatlin, you'll be the second.
Okay.
I heard a voice come in before that. Who was that?
It was Beckfield. Sorry.
Beckfield, thank you. Supervisor Beckfield moves, Gatlin seconds. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Yes, this request was to rezone 21 acres from A1 to A2 agriculture to divide the farmstead to create 2 additional lots and rezone 40 acres from AP to A3 to allow the applicant to divide the property into 2 20-acre parcels. Eau Claire County and the town of Pleasant Valley's land use maps both include this parcel in the RH planning area. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan recognizes that the proposed A2 and A3 zoning districts are consistent. The town board of Pleasant Valley held their public hearing and they supported this 3-0. Planning and developments, we conducted our public hearing and we recommended approval of this 5-0.
Thank you. Questions or comment or discussion? I see none. Supervisors, we will now vote on file 69. All those in favor of file 69, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
Okay, we have then 27, I think 27 aye, 1 nay. Is that correct, Kirk McDonald?
Mm-hmm.
We have 28 voters. We have 28 voters, correct?
Yeah.
27 aye, 1 nay. Thank you. The motion passes. The next item on our agenda under appointments, I have appointed Supervisor Nathan Otto to the Highway Committee, the Highway Building Committee, the Local Emergency Planning Committee, Chippewa Valley Innovation Center, and the 7 Mile Creek Landfill Committee. The Committee on Administration has confirmed that appointment. The chair looks for a motion to confirm.
Wilkie moves to approve the chair's appointments of Nathan Otto to those 5 committees.
the
Pagonis
motion-
seconds.
I'm sorry, but I think I heard Supervisor Pagonis second.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilkie, just to be clear, you are moving to confirm.
Moving to confirm for those 5 committees, yes.
Thank you. Any question, discussion?
Supervisor Beckfield.
Beckfield, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Leary also has her hand raised. Go ahead, Supervisor Beckfield.
I want to welcome him, but I want to make sure he's of sound mind and body that he's taking on all 5 of those. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, if he is, then he's in the wrong place, isn't he? Sorry, I couldn't resist that. Thank you, Supervisor Beckfield. Supervisor Leary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify something, and you had originally appointed Supervisor Zook, I thought, to the 7 Mile landfill. And so is this
No,
replacing
actually,
him, or is it in addition, or something different?
I had appointed Supervisor Zook to the Landfill Siting Committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, thank you.
Well, no problem. I confuse the two all the time. So thank you for your question, and that helps the board to understand. Let's see.
Vote.
Okay, I'm failing here, folks. It's a long evening. Did we vote on this?
No.
Not yet.
We just need to vote.
I'll blame Supervisor Leary for that. She confused me.
I just asked a question.
I'm just kidding.
I thought
Sorry.
it was an interesting one.
It is. All those in favor of confirming the appointment of Supervisor Otto, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Congratulations, Supervisor Otto, or condolences. I'm not sure.
And welcome.
You, I think.
Welcome.
Yes, on behalf of the board, welcome to the group. Supervisors, we have reached the end of our agenda. We are now adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County.